The last mini lecture we left in a discussion about possible government policies when it comes to things like unemployment and controlling the inflation and treating inequalities. But I want to continue about that and say a few more things about what governments can do when it comes to controlling or managing the economy. So governments can do things, as we spoke before and as we spoke in class, and as I mentioned in the previous mini lecture. Governments can use social welfare programs from anything from unemployment insurance to healthcare for the poor to different food stamps or food deliveries to the poor, to education grants and all kinds of things in order to make sure that we have a more even or a more equal distribution of wealth and of resources in the economy. The other thing that we can do, as we said before when we talked about inequality, is to use progressive tax. So in this way, we are taxing those who make more money at a higher rate than those who make less money. And we might even exempt some people at the very low end of income from paying taxes at all. In that way, what we're doing is a redistribution of wealth and income across social and economic classes. Now, another very important thing that can help in economic growth, but also, or more specifically, when it comes to unemployment or to reducing unemployment, is to retrain the workforce, to help people get the skills that they need in order to get jobs or better paying jobs. Sometimes unemployment is not because there are no jobs in the economy, but because the people who are seeking employment don't have the right skill set. So the government can step in and train people and retrain them and help them to shift between industries, and then pay them from unemployment insurance as they are studying a new trade or a new profession or a new skill, so they are not hesitant in taking that class or spending a month or two or a year in retraining their skills. Now, we can also use all kinds of government schemes to encourage individuals or corporations to invest in research and development. There are ways, for example, to incentivize corporations, instead of holding on to their profits, to at least invest some of those back into research and development. And the government can do that by providing corporations tax breaks if they invest in those things the government wants developed and focused on. And of course, the government itself can invest in research and development of specific industries or technologies that we want to see evolving, and that also we think can bring more jobs into the economy. The government can use anti-monopoly regulations to make sure that there is competition in the market. Now, how would that look like? That would look like, the regulations that don't allow communication companies like cell phone companies to buy each other and consolidate the market into one company. every time there is a merge between any of those communication companies, it needs an approval from the government. And at some point, if there's not enough competition, the government can step in and say, no, there's no merger in, those companies cannot join forces together, because if they don't compete against each other, the big losers, of course, are the consumers. Government can always invest in education, specifically in weaker regions or for weaker populations, but more in general, because we know that education is correlated with higher economic activity, at least until some degree. And of course, the government can use the taxes or the tax scheme, how we tax, who we tax, how much, in order to incentivize people to do things like save money or spend money, if that's what we want them to do, and save, for example, towards retirement or something along these lines. To maintain the stability of the economic system is through the use of a central bank. The central bank is an institution that the government establishes to regulate the economic transactions of the government. Now, any government usually have economic transactions that are big and larger than anything that most individuals or businesses or corporations can do. And because of that, we need a bank that can handle this type of transactions. Now, a central bank, aside from the fact that it handles the transactions for the government, it also harmonizes the actions of private banks. So a central bank helps to set up the norms and rules and regulations of the industry of banking more in general. And one of the most important things that the central bank does is it controls the interest rate in the market. So the government can decide how much available cash it wants to have to be free flowing in the economy in order to maintain stability and reduce inflation, etc. And that is on the central bank to decide how much cash to release and how much cash to buy back when they want to impact the interest rates. In the United States, the central bank is the Federal Reserve Bank. We call them the Feds. You probably heard about that name. And the Feds meet periodically. When needed, they meet more and they make those decisions about the interest rate. Right now, the chair is Jerome Powell, and he has been the chair since 2018. The head of the Federal Reserve is appointed by the U.S. president, but many times they do stay in office across administrations. Now, one thing about the central bank is that we would like to have the central bank as much independent as can be and not controlled by the government, because political leaders and the head of the central bank are likely to be at odds with what they want to do. The chair or the head of the central bank would like to keep the economy as stable as possible and sometimes do things like raise the interest rates in order to control inflation. However, politicians tend not to like that because this is not a move that is liked by industry leaders, business people, and in general, that slows down the economy. And politicians like to show a moving economy or economy that is growing and developing and evolving all the time. And so if the central bank is more independent, it is likely to make decisions on the merit of the economic situation. And if the central bank is less independent or more controlled by the government, the decision making is likely to be more political and less economic in nature. And so this is where we have, or many countries are trying to keep the central bank independent, and we sometimes see clashes between heads of state and the heads of the central bank that get into media exchanges or even direct threats against each other. And so these are the tools that the government has when it wants to control the economy and use policies in order to address those four goals of economic growth, lower inflation, lower unemployment, and lower inequality.